As I always like to start out with, Season 3 is finally upon us, and with it comes more wonderful intel to rip into. However, I have found myself becoming increasingly more confused and uncertain with the most recent drop of Maxis intel. Specifically, the one labeled It's Always Dark, which seems to be serving as ground zero for all sorts of revelations regarding Samantha Maxis herself. I've decided to single out this one audio log in particular because it's a very strange piece of intel, and I felt that it contains so many possibilities and moving parts that it deserved its own video. This is also sort of an addendum to a thread I made talking about one aspect of it, which I will be going more in depth about here as well. In other words, I broke my one golden rule of never talk about something that I haven't thought of for days or weeks and have to fix it in a video. Joking aside, the first thing to note about this audio log is that it begins in a very abrupt spot. Dr. Gray comes in and asks Samantha about if any of her memories have come back, to which she responds with, "About my time in the dark ether? Only what you already know. It's mostly a blur. Scavenging supplies by day, fighting for my life by night." This gets followed up with this interaction, and I'm actually going to be playing the audio this time around because the tone for the next few lines is what is very important.
If you're here to ask me if I was the one who made all this happen, the answer is no. I didn't make the outbreak zones.
But it almost sounded like you had some control over the creatures at Outpost 25.
I may have helped open the door, but that doesn't mean I was in control.
How can you be sure if you don't really remember?
I'm no stranger to memory loss. My childhood is almost a complete blank. But that doesn't mean I don't know who I am and what I've done.
This entire section gets more odd the more time you spend looking into it. For one, I'm sure Requiem has no doubt been wondering if Samantha could have created the outbreak zones themselves, but for her to directly refute that possibility is interesting, especially with what she says about being familiar with memory loss. This doesn't sound like it's part of the dark ether-induced memory loss at all, which must allude to the possibility of her having no direct memory of anything from the past. Now, it's far too early to call if that's due to her repressing those memories, or if that's just what happens when you enter a new universe. But it's a very interesting possibility in terms of the story going forward. But there is another part to this. The wording of, "but that doesn't mean I was in control," is what sticks out to me the most. Assuming she remembers nothing, it's as Gray says, she cannot be so sure of that. Those familiar with the story obviously know that she did control the zombies when she was a child, and the fact she may not remember that at all means she has no idea of what her own capabilities are. However, there is a double meaning here if you assume that she actually does remember and is instead just being specific. She could be aware of her capabilities and is giving out the confirmation that she did not use them to the extent as before, instead opening the door at Outpost 25 and giving a direction, but not full control. This same double meaning can also be seen in the memory loss comment of, "That doesn't mean I don't know who I am and what I've done." On one hand, this can be interpreted as she may not remember a lot about her time in the dark ether, but she still knows what she did there, referring to any number of her unfortunate dark ether encounters. However, assuming she does remember the past and is being facetious, this can be taken as meaning that she may be familiar with memory loss, but still knows where she came from and what she has done in the dark ether, while also knowing her relevance to it because of her past. I do want to make it clear that Requiem would not know or realize any of that. I just think the wordplay works so well that it could be something for those who do know of her old story relevance to notice. The audio log after this point becomes even more bizarre, though.
You really don't remember anything prior to the orphanage? Who looked after you? Before? After?
Be careful, Lizzie. You shouldn't expect anyone to look after you. Only you can do that.
I'm gonna go now, if that's okay.
Of course. This is the only way.
Right. When I first heard this, I had absolutely no idea what to make of it. I basically experienced every emotion at once in trying to make out what was happening with every passing sentence. It seems that Samantha has divulged a bit of her past to Gray off screen, which is notable when considering that those two seem to be the closest of the Requiem gang, Weaver not included. In any case, it is being made abundantly clear by Samantha herself that she does not remember her childhood, prior to being at an orphanage. This seems to fit with the idea of her just walking into this new universe and turning up in 1964 as a child. She would need somewhere to go, and that fits the bill. What is important to note is, when Gray asks about if she remembers anything about who cared for her before or after that point, she instantly becomes very strange, saying that she shouldn't expect others to look after her. This leads to two possibilities. One where Samantha genuinely remembers nothing and became odd due to some bad past experience that she doesn't want to recount during that time. This is not off the table, as we have no clue what could have gone on between her being 11 and being 31. As defense mechanisms to suppress memories are something that can occur in those who have experienced trauma as a child. But the second possibility is one that I find to be more likely, which is she's deliberately forming a narrative to the Requiem staff about herself and her past to avoid giving them information that could be misused or used against her specifically. The reason I think this is because right after Gray gets weirded out and leaves, the last thing she says is, "This is the only way." Ignoring the very special relevance of this line for a second, this seems to be a direct response to Gray leaving after her odd behavior. I interpret this as meaning that she believes deliberately acting out, or at least leveraging when she does act out in order to cause concern, is the only way to act towards Requiem to avoid having to answer questions. This implies that she does have knowledge of the past and wants to make sure that nobody finds out about it. It's possible that she believes anyone learning of the specifics of her very existence is dangerous and wants to avoid that for as long as possible by playing off of her own instability. Now, I want to make it abundantly clear that I don't think she's faking entirely. She genuinely does need some help. But I do think that she is conscious enough to be able to create situations where she can avoid questioning using her position at the moment. There is one other thing about that line that she tells Dr. Gray that I noticed as well, whatever it may or may not mean. This intel drop has been particularly interesting in that there is one other piece of intel that directly parallels something in the old story. That, of course, being the audio log where Weaver gives her a dog, which is almost beat for beat like how her father gave her a dog in the old storyline. With this, her words become quite upsetting when you think about the fact that her father was incredibly neglectful. So, if she does remember everything, then I think there may have been some thought behind the sentiment of expecting yourself to be your only carer and protector, just from that alone. But back to the other hand with this topic, I could be completely wrong about this. She could remember absolutely nothing after all, and this is all just meant to make those who know about the old story overanalyze to hell for no reason. Because even her line to Gray could be rationalized as referencing that event where she couldn't save the unnamed boy, given that seems to be the root of Samantha's issues with promising to help others. Her issues with this can be observed all the way back during the Pawn Takes Pawn days, where she is talking with her contact with the end station tape and pauses before promising that she will get her out safely.
We will get you out. Good luck.
All in all, the way that everything is worded seems very deliberate to not reveal anything easily, and therefore, nothing can be called for certain yet. One last thing I would like to touch upon having to do with the line, "This is the only way," is what it could mean with its traditional meaning ascribed to it. This line is most frequently spoken by Primus Edward Richthofen in the old storyline, usually to justify something that he is dead set on doing alone, even when it may not be best. And I find it fascinating that Samantha has said this very line before, for the exact same reasoning. This was in the Die Machina intro, and I find it particularly of note that it has once again come up with that reasoning being a potential point of analysis for her actions. In my opinion, this ties back to the very old underlying character dynamic between Samantha and Richthofen that was displayed in the old Ether storyline, the one that existed outside of their outwardly antagonistic one. And I'll preface this by saying, intentional or not, as shown through the various mediums of storytelling, these two characters are very similar as people. Uncannily so. It's why I believe they were chosen to be the two to walk into the new universe at the end of Tog. They're literally two sides of the same coin and always have been. So to see this come back up in the current story has fantastic potential coming forward, especially with what Craig said in the IGN interview about the two characters needing to be referenced going forward being these two. I think there is much in store for them, and I look forward to seeing where this parallel ends up going. This is way down the line as well, but I plan to make an entire video going over the Samantha and Richthofen parallel. It's sort of my magnum opus of content that I've wanted to do for many years, so look forward to that. In any case, this one audiolog has so much within it that may serve as a reminder that we may not be able to call anything definite about any part of the story until it unfolds. And that's all I've got. So, until next time, thank you for watching.